Greetings, my name is Justin Wilson. I am the director at the Academy Center for Cyberspace Research in the Computer and Cyber Sciences Department at the United States Air Force Academy. Along with my colleagues, Drs. Nair, Scielzo, and Larson, I would like to share with you our research on the objective measures of cognitive load using deep multimodal learning. First, some background to motivate our research. Objectively measuring cognitive load using physiological measures across subject has proven difficult. Past research has taken advantage of the mental load characteristic. This is the assumed difficulty of a given task. The mental load characteristic has been utilized as the label for training workload models, leading to several capable models at the individual subject level. However, when attempting to use these labels cross-subject, the performance of the model significantly degrades. Other attempts have been made with subjective workload ratings, such as with the NASA Task Load Index or NASA TLX. Subjective workload ratings can be problematic due to their variability between subjects and can also differ from a single subject when measured at different points in time. It has been observed that imposed load is not the same as the perceived load for any two subjects capable of completing a task at the same level of proficiency. That is, the amount of required workload to achieve that level of proficiency can be vastly different between subjects. Further, Urson observed that physiological measures do not measure imposed load, but instead they inform how the subject themselves perceive load, and in particular, how they cope with such workload, which is ideally what we want to capture. This leads us to our main research question. Can we accurately and reliably use multiple physiological modalities to objectively evaluate cognitive load as latent context across subjects and across tasks? To answer this research question, we set out to design an experiment that would enable the creation of a cross-subject classifier utilizing multiple physiological measures. Moreover, our chosen domain was aviation. The aviation community has long sought to understand how workload affects aviators while flying aircraft. In fact, many workload metrics used in the UbiComp community arose from the aviation community. Given the issues with the subjective ratings, but also with an understanding that subjective ratings provided our best insight for the cognitive load of an individual subject on a given task, we sought to bound their workload by minimally and maximally loading them. We believed that we could then align the subject ratings cross-subject. We selected maneuvers that are understood to impose both minimal and extreme cognitive load on the subject. We obtained maximum load by utilizing the boundary avoidance tracking theory, which comes from the flight test community. We employed a repeated measures experiment, and each flight maneuver was flown at least twice. We utilized L3 Harris's, now CAE USA, Blue Boxer Extended Reality Simulator. For data collection, we used the E4 Empatica wristband and the HTC Pro Eye with Tobii Eye Tracker VR headset, collecting photoplasmography, electrodermal activity, skin surface temperature, wrist acceleration, and pupillometry. We collected data on a total of 40 subjects, including 21 pilots, 9 operators, and 10 novices. We also collected data on pilots in actual flight with a C-17 cargo aircraft, which I will discuss more later on. For subject label alignment, we accepted the potential error and assumed we succeeded at minimally and maximally loading our subjects. We then applied a quantile transformation to the subjective ratings. We utilized 3 scales or ratings domains for use as labels: the equal weight NASA TLX, the mental demand subscale from NASA TLX, and the Bedford workload scale. From the quantile transformation, we created 3 sets of labels: binary, 3-class, and regression. More details are given in the paper about the alignment procedure. The paper also discusses the model architecture at great length. Briefly, we utilized 3 core architectures: random forest and 2 versions of a novel deep learning architecture we call the biometric multimodal multitask X-vector architecture, or BM3TX. We evaluated both fixed input and variable input versions. The variable input version is possible by taking advantage of the parameter sharing inherent in convolutional neural networks, and by then calculating a statistics layer on the filter output, just like an X-vector used in speaker verification. We trained a variational autoencoder on each sensor stream modality, utilizing the encoder portion for feature extraction. It is important to note that we employed a traditional single-node binary task and included a 2-node with softmax output for a 2-class categorical task. We encourage the audience members to read the paper, but summarize the key findings as follows. The BM3TX outperforms random forests for 2-class categorical and binary cognitive load classification. The overhead of training multiple ratings domains within one large model is not necessary. One domain is sufficient. That is, using the NASA TLX is sufficient. There is no need to combine with an additional domain like Bedford workload. However, multitask training is required. The single task models did not train beyond chance. That is, the loss function requires aggregating a number of tasks in order to train the binary cognitive load classifier properly. Both the equal weight NASA TLX and the mental demand subscales are superior to Bedford workload, but no significant difference between the two was found. To mitigate the variance between training runs caused by the stochastic nature of training, we trained all models' modality combinations over 10 separate cross-validation training runs. When looking at the average accuracy with respect to modality across all runs, the most influential modality was throttle hand acceleration, followed by electrodermal activity, then pupillometry, photoplasmography, and finally temperature. There was a general trend more modalities were superior to fewer. We found that the differences among each subject type group are significant, and subject type can influence the quality of the model. The pilot group tends to have the strongest performance across all models, followed by operators, then novices. It is unclear if this was due to the sample size or if there is a fundamental difference in the way cognitive load presents in each group. Ultimately, we found that we can accurately and reliably use multiple physiological modalities to objectively evaluate 2 levels of cognitive load in a simulated flight environment. Lastly, we participated in the Edwards Objective Measures of Pilot Workload Study, a feasibility study to demonstrate the utility of physiological sensor systems as a flight test data source for objectively assessing pilot workload. 33 maneuvers of workload data were collected in flight on a C-17 cargo aircraft, averaging 7 minutes long. Overall, our pre-trained classifier from simulation data was able to classify cognitive load correctly with 90% true positive rate. However, due to the small data set, we can only conclude that this methodology is feasible. More flight data is needed for a conclusive result, but the results are quite promising. Thank you for your time.